Good afternoon, everybody. I think in the interest and out of respect for your time, we'll get started this afternoon. We're just a few minutes after our scheduled start time. Give people a chance to sign in and to come in. As always, we want to start by saying thank you to all of you for sharing your time with us at our accreditation forums. I want to remind you quickly that this is the second to the last now in our series, and we do have one more following this. We appreciate those of you who have been able to attend some or one or all of them, and so we very much appreciate that. The purpose of the forums, remember, is to break down the key elements that are in our show cause report and share those elements with you in a way that you see where we were when we started in 2012, where we are now, what we've done in the last year, and then finishing each section with what's the action plan. So other than the way things are going to be formatted and how it will be paginated and how it will be cross-referenced, the reality is we're giving you kind of the meat and potatoes of the show cause report in each of these sessions, and that was the purpose for them. So I know there's been a little angst across the campus about the show cause report. I'm going to give you, as we close today, I'm going to give you a timeline and an update on the status of the actual written report and hopefully get some clear facts and information out there that will help everybody feel more comfortable. Even though we know this is an anxious time, we are getting close to the end and it's an anxious time and we understand that. I want to make a couple of quick introductions as we get started. As always, when we have any of our elected board members who take the time out of their day to come and sit with us in the middle of the day and join us in these sessions, we want to acknowledge them. So board member Earl Mann is here again today. Thank you, Earl. And it's kind of coincidental, but we also want to make a special announcement since it just came out today and it's just happened right now and we're all here, and that is we do want to offer special congratulations because we've finished the recruitment and interview and selection process for the appointment of our Dean of Arts and Letters and Learning Resources, and we're proud to appoint and announce Karen Roberts in that new position. And then I don't want to forget to acknowledge that at last night's board meeting, we had the opportunity to issue the oath of office to our new student senator who serves as our student representative to the board. And she just happened to take the time to come today. Diane Garcia, I'd like to introduce our new student rep to the board. Okay, without any further ado, today's topic's twofold. We're going to start with evaluation of process, and we're going to finish with updates on student services. And then at the very end, we'll close with a little summary of where we are on the show cause report itself, and Dr. Lacerna and I will bring this session to a close. I'd like to offer a special thank you to our two presenters. They've not only prepared and worked on presenting today, but they've been members of the accreditation task force since the process started. They've been hardworking members of the subgroup in this particular area on evaluation of processes. They've provided the kind of leadership that we needed in an area that was unfamiliar to a lot of us because it had to do with resources, money, budgeting cycles, how those cycles were designed, and how to make sense of it in a way that we could all look at it in a manual now and understand it as a process. So special thank you to our two presenters today, Ms. Jana Shingle and Omar Gutierrez.
We are going to present on evaluation of processes. What has happened before in previous forums, and it's kind of helpful for me to present it in that manner, is give you a little history of where we were 2000, 2006 in our accreditation team visits, tell you where we are now compared to those results, and compare them as well to the 2012 accreditation visit and what we need to do from this point forward. Closer, closer, closer. Is that better? Closer? Okay. Okay. You have to remind me to do this, okay? Because it's not going to happen. Closer, closer. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to try my hardest to keep it this close. It's not natural for me, just to let you know. So here we go. In 2000, and again, I this helps me learn where we've been and where we have to go. So I hope that you find it informational as well, and that it helps us proceed to where we need to be in the new processes that we need to start evaluating from this point forward. In 2000, one of the recommendations that the visiting team had at that point in time was that we need to integrate and coordinate the various college planning processes and develop a comprehensive educational master plan. That's in the year 2000. We went ahead and developed a master plan in 2005, 2006, right before the 2006 visit. And we thought that would have been a good response to that particular recommendation when they came back in 2006. One of the things that they noticed when they came back in 2006 that it was a good start, but not necessarily didn't encompass everything that they were hoping to have gathered at that point in time. So in 2006, they wanted us to engage all campus groups in institutional decision-making and planning processes. In 2000 and 2006, they also were developing or asking where the links were to our master plan. If we're going to develop a budget process, if we're going to develop certain timelines and resource allocation, how are we linking those up to our master plan, to our goals, to our objectives? How does that happen? It was not clear to our visit team at that point in time. Fast forward to what's happening now in 2012, they had the same kind of issues as far as they didn't see the connection. So the response that we had here at COS through all of our work was we implemented 3 manuals to face this this connection disparity that we had. One of the particular manuals is the integrated planning. We wanted to make sure that everybody knew what their role was within the committees, subcommittees, and overall Senate structure that we have. The governance and decision-making model, which tells us who is in charge of what, and who is supposed to be doing certain things at a certain time of year, who's in charge of decision-making. Not every single committee that we have here on campus makes the ultimate decision for the college, and that's something that we need to put in writing. One of the things, another model that we had is the resource allocation model that is extremely new to the process. It's the last model to be approved. And that also tells us what is important to the college as far as where we're going to be putting our resources from this point forward. Resources as far as money, obviously everybody thinks of it that way, but it's also people. Where are we putting our workforce to work for us? These 3 processes have responsible parties. Every single one of the processes have somebody that they account to, either a group, or a committee, or somebody that's responsible to making sure these processes stay in place, stay in line, and they are therefore evaluated at the end of the year. And this is something that's new to us as a district. The integrated planning process, the responsible party is the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee. We're really bad with acronyms, so we try to not use them at all in our presentation. The governance and decision-making model is the District Governance Senate, aka College Council, that we're not saying College Council anymore, but it's District Governance Senate. And the resource allocation process is housed at the Budget Committee, the Budget Committee, which is a committee underneath the District Governance Senate. So all these 3 committees have a guidance, a rule. Their job is to make sure that we're looking at our processes, that we're following what we said we were going to do, and if it needs to be tinkered with, we have to do it within that process itself. One of the things that I had mentioned earlier to some of the staff is that we may think previous to 2.0, just as an example, the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee, we believe even now, before we even start getting more people or some of the work done, that we may need that committee to be with more people. We need more people to do the work. Previous to 2.0, we would just say, hey, Susie, Joe, Jane, come on over, sit down, let's do it, let's get work done. There was no appointment techniques, and if there were, they weren't being followed. That's basically how it used to, previous to 2.0 used to be. Now we have a structure. We know we're going to need more people once we start down this path. there's a structure to go ahead and get more people appointed to the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee within the process itself. Okay, so that's the big change, where that, if it was in writing before, it just was not as linear and as straightforward as it is now. Hope that makes sense. So the district did not have a systematic procedure of ongoing evaluations for any of their committees according to the visiting team. We didn't have a process in place that was, well, that made sense. If you recall last week's presentation with planning, the first slide that Christian Anderson and Cindy Lane presented, it had boxes and arrows just about everywhere, right? How do you evaluate that process? If you could even see the lines and you didn't know how the process even worked, how do you evaluate it? We had no way to evaluate what we were doing because it was a little bit all over the place, if you say that. So now we have a way to evaluate it by requiring all the committees, all senates, and all councils to report to their parent senates. So, for example, the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee, the Budget Committee, will report mid-year report and year-end report their initiatives, their work to the parent senate, which is the district governance senate. And the same thing for the committees underneath the academic senate. They're going to be doing the same exact thing. Okay, some of the expectations for each committee is something that seems to be very simple, but it has to happen systematically throughout campus, throughout the district. Posting of agendas, minutes recorded, quorum attained, attendance a meeting, and make sure that you are actually filling out the new forms that have been approved, if I'm not mistaken, by the District Governance Senate and Academic Senate regarding the Senate Committee initiatives or responsibilities, and also the mid-year and end-year evaluations. How are we doing as a budget committee? How are we doing as a subcommittee? What can we do better? What worked? What didn't work? Those are a little more sophisticated questions than we had asked before of ourselves. So just it's a little bit different, and it seems like it should be simple agendas and minutes and such, but the evidence was not there previously, and now it has to be. So that's the big difference. The forms that I was speaking about earlier about the responsibilities for each committee, each Senate, and the mid-year report, how does the parent Senate want their information to be disclosed to them by the subcommittees. They're all posted online. This is hard to see here. I'm going to give you the front page of that, but if you go online, and I don't necessarily know exactly what address, I think we can click on this and it'll take us there. But every single form to report to that parent Senate how the committee is doing, their responsibilities, and things that they suggest, all those forms are approved and ready to go online for the committees and co-chairs to start filling them out. Okay? And John is going to take care of that.
I think what this slide teaches us is that just like the student learning outcomes have to be codified and we have to prove to ourselves and to our students that they learned something, what we realize that the institution needs to be held to that same accountability. Just like we grade our students, we need to grade ourselves. And so what we lacked was a systematic way to evaluate our service areas, and service areas would probably be anything that's not happening in the classroom. So it would be financial aid, it would be fiscal services, it would be janitorial services, it would really anything that kind of is behind the scenes that makes the college work. Just like we grade our students, then we need to grade ourselves. And so what they've asked us to do is to have service areas with actions that support the district objectives. And this has been something that's been difficult for some of us to wrap our head around because we think, well, we do our job. That's how we know we do our job. But we needed some way to prove to the commission that we do our job on a daily basis. So each of the service areas are working on and have inputted into TrackDat kind of goals for their departments. So just like we have student learning outcomes and tracked at, now we have service areas that have outcomes and tracked at. And the nice part about that is tracked at is just a very easy way for us to harvest the proof that we're working every day. It's really nothing more complicated than that. And so each service area is working on getting their things in tracked at, their objectives, and then we're aligning those with the district objectives. And that's what Omar was trying to say, that what they could never see was how what we do on the ground linked back to the district objectives, the big overall things. Why the state gives us so much money, we needed a way to link that back and prove that we're being good stewards of the funds that we receive from the taxpayers. So those are called the SAOs, and they'll be evaluated, and the results we can actually harvest out of TrackDat. So that's another cool thing that TrackDat's been a good investment. It's not just to track student learning outcomes, but also to track the service area outcomes.
I use the auditors, in my experience, to kind of correlate what happens with the district-wide as far as accreditation teams. When our finance department, we get a visit from our auditors, the external auditors, we don't see them as enemies or things. We see them as partners to display the data that we know is correct in our system. And I think that has helped me a lot in seeing how the accreditation team, when they come over, they're seeing the data that we already have, and hopefully they come to the same results that we have as well, that we are operating in a systematic way of making sure that decision makers are making the decisions based on data and things of that nature. I don't see, that has helped me at least. When I view the accreditation team coming over and continuing to come over, it's the same thing, our external auditors, that's how I see them. Because external auditors come every year, can't get rid of them. So that has helped me understand, you have to be comfortable with that team coming over and talking to each one of us about what are we doing here, what is our goals, what are our objectives, where are we going, and why are we going there. They sound like simple questions, but they do require sometimes very deep answers, and hopefully every single one of us has that seed inside ourselves to go ahead and answer that to the best of our abilities. One of the things that we also wanted to touch upon is the connection that the audit teams have said since 2000, 2006, and 2012, is that those connections were missing from the budget development process. How do we allocate resources based on our master plan, based on our mission, what are our priorities? And those connections were not very evident whatsoever to the team that visited us. Now, if they were there, great, but they did not see it. So that was one of the main concerns that now we need to know, okay, we need to have evidence to support every single decision we have, and we need to have minutes, every single group at the table, making sure that we're moving forward with data and having the people that make decisions with the information to make the best decision that they can. So part of the budget development process is embedded in the resource allocation manual. Now, the resource allocation manual has two main parts to it, if you will. I think the budget committee will argue there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, but there's two main things on there. The budget development and the above base allocations. And it's supposed to, and realize that I say supposed to because we have yet to go through a cycle, but it's supposed to be, we are supposed to, as an institution, be aligning our resources based on our objectives. And that's something that we're going to need to tie in as we allocate our monies, our people, our facilities, anything that has to do with resources from here at this point forward. So the action plans going forward, don't you want to take it?
So what we're going to do for our action plan, the most important thing that you can get out of today is to see if you can fill this out. If there's anything you need to know when the visiting team comes, it's this process, because this basically is the assessment process. We're grading ourselves based on data analysis. So the ladies are going to pass you out, and you have a couple minutes to fill this out to the best of your abilities. You can work in teams. I don't care. This is a cooperative learning. So try to get it filled out real quick. We have some prizes. If you can get it filled out, we're going to take about 2 minutes. So, and the action plans that we have is that there's an annual cycle. But I'm still talking. Your papers are coming. All right, so here we go. I'm going to tell you real quick. The district governance and the academic senate, as well as the president's office, are going to make sure that all of this data, all of this assessment, all the measurement, all the grades that we're giving ourselves through TrackDat, through evaluation of committees, they're going to put all of that in the annual. Oh, that's my next action plan. Oh, the annual report. So that's your very last box. I'll give you a cheat sheet on that. The very last box of the cycle is the annual report. And that's where we grade ourselves. That's our report card. Omar, question? Oh. Okay, can you fill it out? We don't want to take too much of the next group's time, so go as fast as you can. Yeah, you guys are like, yeah, go ahead, take all our time. Oh. Pam, you want to do one? There's really cool prizes. Annette, one more? Pam. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. If you have at least the first box filled out, stand up. If you have at least the very top box, stand up. If you know the top box, stand up. Okay? You're 99% sure your top box is right. Okay? All together, what's the top box? Mission. Good job. Okay. Now, stay standing if you're 99% sure your second box is right. Stay standing if you think your second box is right. What's the second box? Some of you should be standing. Okay, circling around. The third box. Stay standing if you're very confident of your third box. What's the third box? Strategic plan. Okay. The first arrow drops down into the fourth box. Stay standing if you're pretty sure about your fourth box. What's the fourth box? Institutional program review. Good. Okay, those two circle around to the fifth box, which is the all-important box of... So the money box is on the right-hand side, money box. Stay standing if you've got all of those filled in. Sixth box. Stay standing if you are pretty confident of your sixth box. What is it? Implementation. That's our day-to-day work. That's what we do every day is we implement. All right, circling back around up on the left-hand side. The seventh box is? Okay, how many do I have standing? Okay, the last box, the eighth box is what? Annual report. I gave you guys that cheat sheet. Okay, So how many do I have standing? 1, 2, 3. Omar, start passing out prizes. Okay. Wait a minute. What is in the middle circle? Yay! Real hardcore data that we have to measure. If you guys are still standing, if you are one of the 9 still standing, if you'll come up afterwards, we have really cool prizes for the 9 of you still standing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. If I have your attention, this is the way the circle is supposed to look. Our integrated planning model. Mission, master plan, strategic plan. And then it feeds into program review, resource allocation, implementation, outcome and assessments, the annual report on the master plan, which is going to be obviously annually, hopefully around May. Everything's driven by data. Data. So all the assessments that we're going to be requiring of every committee, Senate, it's going to be displayed or made public here, the master plan report. So we're doing this every year as well. Every year we're looking out. Every committee is going to look at what can they do better, what didn't work, what did work, and why not. Move forward. Every single year we're going to be doing this. This is the way of life now. This is it. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you to Omar and Jana for covering all of that for us, for being brave enough to insert a little interactive activity in a big room setting like this. A shout out to our visitors in Hanford and Tulare. We're going to send prizes over to your campus too. We trust that you participated. And we're going to make sure that your provosts get some gift packages that they can figure out a way to do a little drawing and honor all of you on our other 2 campuses as well. The idea of going through the exercise, fun and interesting as it is and almost comical sometimes, is really a good exercise though, because we have been seeing these models pretty continuously, some of us, for a long time. And if we as a collective group of staff, faculty, students can't yet kind of repeat and recite what our annual cycle of continuous improvement is, then it's going to be hard for us as an institution to embed it into our culture. So we're going to continue these kinds of activities because, as Omar said, this really is the way of life now. And in the manual, there's timelines attached to it. There's responsible parties. We have triggers in our calendars. So I can open up the institutional planning calendar, which now hangs on the website, and I can see what month it's going to be my responsibility to initiate the master plan update with the Board of Education. And as that process starts, it affects the strategic plan. And as that process starts, it impacts program review, and the cycle will be continuous. We have those dates actually mapped out month by month for 10 years. So whether this president comes or goes, or academic senate president comes or goes, the institutional integrity is in place now. The other thing that I thought was really cool is for those of us who didn't have the answers on the top of our heads today as we were doing this activity, we were pretty darn innovative, because I saw some cell phones out and you guys were online. And I got to give you props for ingenuity right there. They're finding it. It's there, and it's for us to be able to look at and to use and to understand as a way of operation. So thank you again. Let's transition now to any questions on planning, evaluation of processes, resources. Let's transition to the second part of today's presentation, which is really one of the lesser mentioned, if you will, in the accreditation report itself, but one of the most significant in terms of direct impact on our students on the ground and the amount of work that we've been able to accomplish in the last 12 months. We're going to shift to the recommendation on student services, and we'd like to introduce Ming Vang and Malena Saeed. If they would make their way up. Ming has been on our Accreditation Response Task Force representing student services and our counseling division. Of course, we know that Malena works in our Library Resource Center, and some of these areas have really been the most challenging areas of transition, because when the visiting team came and they measured us, it was hard for folks in these positions not to feel like their services were coming under some personal scrutiny, because it was the level of these services that we were not providing to our remote campuses like Hanford and Tulare that caused the accrediting team to say, hey, wait a minute, you have to have equity, you have to have parity. It doesn't mean you have to have the same thing at all three of your campuses, but you have to have the right proportionate share. And what we kept saying to them is, but we need more money to do that. We need more resources. We need to hire more people. And what they kept telling us, and what we learned in this process, is that's one of the solutions for sure. Resources are always going to be one of the solutions. But creativity and ingenuity aren't too bad either. And what I want to give these two a tremendous amount of credit for is they went back to their respective departments and they said, you know, we made the pitch for strictly needing more resources. And without that, in these budget times, we have to figure out how to do different things with the resources we have. And you know what the underpinning for all of that was? Their commitment to making sure that our students get what they need. So I greatly appreciate the time and effort that they've put into that. And they're here today to talk us through the student services portion of our presentation.
Okay, so before we make the presentation, I just want to kind of give a shout out and thank you to our leader in our subcommittee, Dr. Kristen Hollabaugh. She's done such tremendous amount of work. So thank you. She's done a lot in terms of putting all this stuff together, gathering the data for us, and just leading our group. And not only that, but I can say that my RTF subcommittee, I think we're one of the hardest, maybe the hardest working group, because we can say that our group has not only given time and effort, but we sacrifice loss of limbs and other stuff too. So we, two of our committee members, they were injured throughout this process. So I don't know if there's any place to put that on the accreditation report, but two of our members. So I think we're the only group that we can say that we sacrifice limbs and loss of limbs for that. So, but on a serious note, we're going to trade off and on and do the different, throughout the different slides. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's been happening in student services to try to address the recommendation of providing equitable services for our three sites, which is Visalia, Tulare, and Hanford. Where were we in July of 2012? We had, before July of 2012, we have always had evening counseling. But that's when we had money, and we had resources. Then when we went through that little period of time where budget became an issue, we suspended evening counseling. Just because we didn't have the budget for it, so we suspended it. And even when we had it in the past, evening counseling was primarily only offered to COS Visalia students. We didn't have it for Hanford, and at that time, Tulare Center did not yet existed. We had online counseling. Online counseling, it did exist at that time. However, the ability for students to access online counseling was very difficult. And the reason why it was difficult was it was buried under 4 or 5 layers of our website. So you would have to be a very, very persistent student to dig through the multiple layers to find out, oh, gee, COS has this feature. Oh, okay. So that made it very difficult. In addition, at that time, real estate space on the COS front homepage was at a premium, so it was very difficult to get our link for online counseling to be linked up to the front of the homepage. So those were the things that we were struggling with. Also at that time, we had a full-time counselor, Lisa, at Hanford, and then at that time, we were more focused on student learning, or SLOs, in our student services area. We kind of heard a little bit about, SAOs, or service area outcomes. We probably didn't know how that was going to fit in at that time because it was still kind of new to most of us in student services. So SAOs were just kind of beginning to crop up. And I think this is yours.
I haven't done this in real life yet, so first time with a mic. In July, this first one is actually Manx, but he wanted me to do the whole slide. So students have access to a number of student and support services in person and via internet. This, I'm sure he was thinking about counselors, but I can say that's true about the library. Is this close enough? Okay. Like an ice cream, I was told. Okay. In July 2012, the library was open only for 16 hours a week. That's 4 hours, 4 days a week. And in Hanford, that was only 1 day, 4 hours. And I wish I could tell you September from now, but I'll remind you what was on this slide when we get there. Tulare was closed during the summer. Esca Librarian is online reference service that's available to students and staff and faculty. It's a way to ask a real live librarian like myself a question in anytime you want to via email, and then we read it and respond to you. So we encourage students to use that. That was available only when librarians were on campus, those 16 hours. In July, there were no classes offered face-to-face or online during summer, and there was no separate budget for Hanford or Tulare Center.
Okay, so where are we at right now in September 2013? So around April or so of last year, our group got together with the deans and the dean from our student services and the VP of student services, and we looked at the possibility of starting back up with evening counseling, providing the counseling services for evening students. We took a look at data, and we knew that there was a need, but we wanted to make sure that the data backed it. So we started limited evening counseling because we knew that whatever we provide for evening counseling, the resources that we gave for evening counseling, that was going to have to come from somewhere else. It was we would have to shuffle resources around. So we started with limited evening counseling in April, and we said we wanted to give it at least a whole semester, to try for a whole semester, and then we will take a look at the number of students that we serve, and we'll look at maybe possibly sending out some student surveys and collecting additional data to see if we need to make any changes or modification. We suspended evening counseling for the summer because we figured we didn't offer any evening classes in the summer, and with the limited resources, we suspended evening counseling for the summer, and then we picked that up again starting this fall semester. So, and now we've also made sure that evening counseling was not just only limited to COS Visalia, but also the Tulare Center and the Hanford Center. So we're doing 2 nights a month in Visalia, 1 night a month in Tulare, 1 night a month in Hanford to be equitable to all 3 campuses. As far as the online counseling piece, we continue to offer that, and we suspended it for the summer, but we we made the link live again for starting this fall semester. And what we have done is we formalized that a little bit, because in the past, we never thought about collecting data. We just thought we offer the service and that was pretty much it. But when we got together in our group, we said, hey, you know what? If we have students who are going to be utilizing this service, we have a captive audience when they click onto the link. So let's put in some questions there so that we can ask and collect the kinds of data that we want to find out what type of students, these students that are using the online services. You know, so we're collecting data such as what time are they actually accessing this, okay? Are they accessing it during the day? Are they accessing it middle of the night? Are they accessing it, you know, at 4 a.m. in the morning? So we're collecting that kind of data. We're asking, like, what is their primary location where they're taking the majority of their classes? Are they at Visalia, Hanford, Tulare? So we're asking these kinds of questions, and we're hoping that by the end of this semester, we would have at least a good whole semester's worth of data so that we can reanalyze that and look at what kinds of student or what types of students are utilizing these services. And not only that, but we have formalized the process of dedicating resources to our online counseling, because in the past it was like, oh, okay, you have some time in between your appointments, so you log on to the online counseling, you answer some question. And we had no way to formally track that piece to say that COS has dedicated resources to it. But now what we've done is we've blocked off specific counselors for 30 minutes out of each day to assign to do the online counseling, so that if ACCJC asks us the question, what resources or how, show us what you guys have been doing for online counseling, we can show them that the personnel resources was dedicated for that. And then we can also pull up our little repository data collection bank where we show what we keep track of how many students access this and what was the turnaround time for our responses too. We can present them with all these data. So I think we're in a much better situation now because we're actually thinking about data with our online counseling piece. We also now have a full-time counselor in Tulare, in addition to the full-time counselor in Hanford. And we also now have a more consistent schedule of the different staff and faculty members from different areas like EOP and SDRC, veterans, that they're making their visits to the Hanford and Tulare centers to service those types of students too. So if there's a student that needs to be served for EOP&S or DRC or veterans in Tulare or Hanford, they don't necessarily have to come to main campus now, but they can make an appointment to meet with the specific staff person that goes out there during the week. And I think this is no? Okay. We also continue to offer tutorial services both at Hanford and the Tulare campuses, and because SAO now has kind of, you know, come into existence, and we know we need to start looking at them and incorporating them into our program reviews for many of our student services areas. So there are staff members and managers that have been trained on SAOs and how to input this stuff into TrackDat. So I think that's more, we're still working on that, but I think everyone now is more aware of the importance of SAOs in student services at this time. Okay, I'll talk a little bit at the top. Okay, what you guys might have noticed if you looked at our homepage, there is this thing called Ask COS, and the idea behind Ask COS is this: oftentimes we have a lot of students who would, you know, look at our website and trying to find information, and we know that sometimes through the multiple layers or that we have on our website, sometimes it's very difficult to find information because every division, every department, they have their own website with their own frequently asked questions. And so this Ask COS was made possible with a grant from, I want to say, Title V or FYE. This is a program where it's kind of like you can type in a question to it, and it will try to respond to what your answer is, okay, as best as it can. And not only that, but when you get the answer, it's also going to include other things that are similar, or maybe someone else has asked something similar to that. It will say, you know, other people that have asked your question might have also looked at this, and it'll give them more information. And it also allows the user to rate how effective or how correct AskCOS was able to respond to their questions. So in a sense, it's another tool. It's another tool to enhance the students' experience with our website. And it's a 24/7. We don't need to hire a live person to be manning that, because it's an automatic thing. And not only that, but it allows students to get some simple questions like, you know, how do I register for a class? Instead of actually utilizing that time for an online counseling question. So it helps to filter out some of the small little questions that students can ask, and it helps us to allow our time when we get onto the online counseling piece to actually answer questions that are more in-depth that AskCOS cannot answer. So I know we just launched it. It's not perfect yet, but we're working on it to make it so that it gets better with each semester that we successively go through this AskCOS. So we're hoping that students are utilizing that, and we'll take a look at the data to see what that looks like at the end of the semester, and we'll see if we need to tweak that a little bit.
Okay, you may remember in July we were open only, we meaning library and LRC in Visalia. It was open only 16 hours. This semester it's 54 hours a week. Every hour that the library is open, there is a professional librarian. And for those of you that don't know, we have Masters in Library Information Science, and we are faculty members. So one of us is available those 54 hours a week. In Hanford, the library is open 58.5 hours. That includes 8 evening hours. And there are 2 adjunct librarians working there, total 18 hours. We are in the process of hiring another person as I speak, actually. Tulare Center Library is open 36 hours a week, and starting this Tuesday, every hour the library is open, there is one professional librarian. So it's exciting. Very creative. Ask a Librarian service that I mentioned, online reference service that we provide, extended from 16 hours during the summer to, from 36 in spring, or 16 during the summer, to 54 a week in fall. And this includes 16 evening hours. And because we worked a little bit around, there used to be only one person responsible for service. Now it's 6 of us, and we have dedicated certain day and time, so there is more responsibility attached to it. The response time is shorter, and one very helpful tool is the desktop link that was added to the student computers in Hanford and Tulare. So when students log on computers, they have Ask a Librarian icon that they can click on. And that is helpful if librarian is not available at that time. They can use online reference service. One class has been offered in Hanford this fall, and one in Tulare next spring. There were no classes in the past, library classes. And separate budgets were created for both Hanford and Tulare. If you remember from July, there were no budgets available.
Okay, so the action plan going forward. We want to let the online counseling piece and the evening counseling piece, let it run for at least a semester and gather some data. We want to look at the data to see, what that reveals or what that shows us. and do some analysis and see if there's ways for us to continuously improve both services, online counseling and evening counseling services. So that's what one of the action plan is. Also, the administrative and student services, we will continue to look at and evaluate our processes and our services in our areas to, as far as the service area outcomes go, to improve continuously improve our services that we're offering students in our areas there. As far as the district website enhancement, again, that's referencing to the Ask COS, and that piece, I know we have group members in our subcommittee that is working with the vendor, the people that are providing the Ask COS service to us. They're working with them to try to improve the information that Ask COS is providing for students. So we'll take a look at that. I know there's Kristen and Jessica are still working with them, so to hopefully improve and enhance the students' interface or experience using our COS website. We're also looking at increasing and improving learning support services for both center and online students. But again, that we're going to have to look and review at some of our data to see what we can do. And that goes for both the two services to look at possibility of increasing and allocating further support services for both Tulare and Hanford campuses. And I think, is this yours or is this still mine? Okay.
Wait, the last. We're almost done with this. Action plan, designing a more comprehensive research plan. I would say this is number one for us right now. As far as I know, we didn't really have a research plan, especially not a comprehensive one, to assess our services. We did start gathering some data last semester. We have a lot of them, but we do need a well-designed plan. So we'll keep Mr. Osterk busy with us, or maybe less busy once we learn how to do it. Then we do need to revise our program review for this area. We're working on it now. It should be done by October 15th. As I mentioned before, we are hiring an adjunct librarian for Hanford, so that will be 15 additional hours over there. And just keep in mind, Hanford did not have any library staff all these 4 years. For instance, when accreditation team came last year, they asked a question, may we please speak with the full-time librarian from Hanford? And we didn't have an answer, really. Like, no. But this sounds much better, because now we'll have 3 adjunct librarians working there, so that's much better. And we will be hiring 1 full-time librarian that will serve both Tulare and Hanford in fall 2014. Meanwhile, we are still being creative and hoping for the best. Thank you.
Any questions on those topic areas? We're just about ready to wrap up. Thank you again, Ming, Melina. Thank you so much. I want to not forget to acknowledge that while we were in the middle of our presentation, another of our board members was able to swing by and join us. He sat and then he moved, and now he's adjusted. And we want to thank John Zumwalt for being here from our Board of Trustees. Thanks, John. I also want to remind all of you that we have the electronic surveys out following each of these sessions. Check your email. Please respond to those if you have any questions. We have the survey out from last week's forum. We want as many responses as you can provide us, and we'll have a survey response opportunity out for you. Not a survey, it's really a question opportunity for you to ask any questions or provide any input following today's session, we encourage you to do that as well. Take advantage of those because this is the last minute gathering of information that we're going to be able to weave into the final touches of the show cause report. And I want to close our presentation today with all of you with a quick update of where we are on the actual document, the show cause document. I know there's been some talk and some thought about that document, and here's where we are. It was a process that started over the course of the summer, and I'm going to be the first to tell you that I'm learning a lot in this process, and I know that there are very few schools up until the last few years that have gone through a show cause order, so there's no ACCJC template for what a show cause report should look like. So we were looking at those community colleges who were most like us in size and in scope of show cause sanctions, and we were trying to model ourselves after those. Those show cause reports, remember though, were actually being turned into the ACCJC and at the same time getting written reviews given back to them. So as we were reading the show cause reports that other colleges had submitted, we were also reading the ACCJC's responses to those reports, and if they were giving them recommendations to make those reports better, we were trying to build ours like that the first time. So we went on this quest over the course of the summer. Dr. Lacerna and our consultant representative, Dr. Eva Conrad, to try to gather all the information that had been developed through the response task force over the course of last spring. All of the subgroups were asked to put data together and submit information, content, and responses to the individual standards and recommendations, and they were all piled up in Microsoft Word files. So the first thing we had to do was start sorting through all of that, organizing it, and then trying to start to format it and match it up with the proper response format for a show cause report. Here's what we've learned. It's an incredibly monumental task. Jennifer and I, by the time we hit the month of June, realized that 2 administrators were not going to be able to write this by themselves, and 2 administrators, even with the help of a professional consultant, were not going to be able to write this by themselves. For a couple of reasons. We not only had to respond to the eligibility criteria, the recommendations, and the standards, but we also had to address everything that was in the visiting team's 2012 report and the itemized show cause letter we got from the ACCJC. So there was this 5-way cross-reference triangulation that had to go on, and we immediately reconvened with the response task force this fall, and we said, we need help. Here's where we are. We need to assemble a team. One of the best practices that all of the colleges have used and our advisors at ACCJC recommended to us is form an editing team. They're going to do some editing. Now, if editing means rewriting some sections or adding some content, then that's what we're doing. If editing means making it more succinct and a little less colloquial and more scientific, that's what we're doing. If editing means reorganizing it and formatting it and getting it to flow, that's what we're doing. We're doing all of those things. But there were a couple of kind of feelings out there that maybe there were whole parts of the report that were not written yet, and I'm just here to tell you that that's not accurate. There's a lot of content and data there, but it's all had to been organized, and it's had to have been managed. So we put 6 brilliant people in a room together, and we said, we need your help. You have experience in this area. You're technical writers, which was our recommendation, and we need to figure out how to get this properly organized. We started calling our advisors at the ACCJC again as recent as last week, and there was a moment where I felt a little bit like the scene out of Apollo 13, where the astronauts are in the lunar module, and they're waiting for the flight plan to get back to Earth. And Tom Hanks, remember, was playing the role of Jim Lovell, and he looks over at the other 2 guys, and he goes, they don't have the plan. They don't know how to do this. Because we were on the phone with our advisors from the ACCJC, and we were asking them, do we write the recommendation, then the standard, then the eligibility criteria? Or do we put the eligibility criteria, then the standard, then the recommendation? And there was that moment of silence where I felt like we were in the Apollo 13 lunar module. And so they said, we got to get back to you. And so we're up there in the capsule, you know, ready to hit re-entry. For a moment, we were turning into the Donner Party. We had to order food to save our own lives. Christian Anderson made the comment, he goes, hey, there was 8 of us when we started. There's only 6 of us now. We've had some comical moments, but we've had some really stressful moments as well. And what we learned from our advisors is the specific order. Here's the order that you need to put this stuff in. And unfortunately for us, you guys, it was a different order than what we collected the original material. So when we learned that it had to be eligibility criteria first, and we were writing as though that was going to be the conclusion, and you need to address your standards right off the bat, and then tie it into the recommendation, we had prepared everything in the reverse order. But we got it straightened out. We got it on track. And Matt's in here. He's on the team. Jennifer's in here. She's on the team. Kristen's in here. I think this last weekend we found our rhythm. We got the tasks divided up. We got the right people cross-referencing. One person was checking the show cause letter. One of us was checking the visiting team report. One of us was checking the standards, the recommendations. We got the system working, and we're making up ground now exponentially. It is stressful. It is a lot of work, but I didn't want that feeling out there of anxiousness to be that we wasted the summer and we came back to school and there was no report written, because that's not the status, and I'm hoping that you haven't heard that from anybody. So we've made up some real ground now, and we're close. I think we're within days of having the report done, and here's our timeline. We need to make sure that it gets out to District Governance Senate and to Academic Senate next week. Remember, when it's coming out to the faculty at large now, it's coming out as an unofficial copy. But it's coming out now so that you can read it and tell us, number one, are we saying something in here that's not factual? Do we have an error of fact? Or number two, is there an important detail in here throughout this process that we've missed? Those are the only 2 things we have time to look for now. So if we're not as colloquial as your style would prefer, or if we didn't do it exactly the way you might have liked to have gotten it done in terms of how it flows and what the voice is, we're going to ask for your indulgence in recognizing the hard work that this team has put together, and that they've been following the advice and the guidance of some pretty expert people who we also know were kind of figuring it out as they go. And so I think what our timeline is to have it out to Academic Senate and District Governance Senate next week, and at the same time make it available to our Board of Trustees when we publish it on the campus community. The reason for that is our board needs about a week to be able to see it and actually look at it, because it'll be on the board agenda for October 14th. And our board's job when it gets to their agenda is to ratify the report. Our board knows from their ACC-JC training that they're not going to edit it or rewrite it either. They just have to verify that it's been presented to them publicly at a public meeting and it's available for public review. So they'll have a week to read it, and then they'll be able to ratify it on their agenda. We have to have it to the ACC-JC by October 15th. We have the printing schedule all set to begin on October the 7th. From the 7th to about the 10th, we're going to allow our print company to be printing copies. We're going to drive down and get the first 20 copies. We're going to bring them back, put them in the box, and FedEx them on October the 10th, 5 days before they're due. And on October the 12th, I'm going to call. And if Sacramento hasn't received ours, we'll have another set, and I'll drive them up there. Okay? So we didn't want you to think that just because the board's going to see it on the 14th, it won't get there the next day. We've thought through that. We have a plan. So I hope that puts you a little bit at ease about the status of the final report. I hope you were as impressed today as I was with not only what our planning and integrated planning has done, but in particular, in such a short amount of time, I can't tell you how proud I am of how Student Services really just rearranged the same money they had for the most part to do things differently. We could have spent those dollars on anything, but what we've learned is that accreditation helps us align our focus, and the things that were shared today really are pointed in the right direction, so it's a great investment of those resources. And our accreditation liaison officer, Dr. Lacerna, is going to be the one, along with that editing team that's going to see this show cause report through to the final end. And I promised today that I would give her the last few minutes to close today's meeting.
I'll be quick, I promise. So for those of you that don't know me that well, and those of you that do, I'm quite a perfectionist. For those of you that know me will just smile right now because they know that. And so one of the hardest things for me to do is ask for help. And about 3 weeks into holding myself off into writing, I realized I couldn't do this by myself. So I remember walking into a senior management meeting and asking for help. And my friends, Brent and Kristen and John Bratch, stood up. So it's not easy to not be able to do this on my own, and I want to apologize to any of the faculty, the members of Senate, the editing team who have been under a great deal of stress trying to get it done. I'm also very human, as you guys can see. So my editing team, they are amazing. And the cool thing is that when you, in times in life when you go, oh my God, the things I didn't know, if I knew them now, I would do it differently. And then you never get to do it. Guess what? The best part of this is going, I get to do this all over again, because regardless of how this turns out, we're going to have to write another report. And everything that I have learned, everything that senior management has learned, everything that the editing team has learned, we get to start in December this time. So what we tried to fit into 3 months, we're going to have 8 months to do. And this is normally a process that takes 2 years. So I get a do-over, and I'm excited about that. And I'm going to work with my editing team and senior management and academic senate to plan how we're going to schedule that next report out, because we will be writing another report. So I just wanted to take a chance to say thank you. And we're getting this done. It's going to be good. And we're all going to take a long vacation.
The hardest thing to do sometimes in a leadership position is to stand in front of your peers and humble yourself and say, you know, I'm sorry. And so I thank Jennifer for her willingness to share with you what she had to go through and how we've all been affected by it. But we said from the beginning there's no finger pointing, and we're not blaming anybody, and that's not changing now either. We're very close to the end. This has been a really interesting and incredibly challenging process for us, but in a twisted kind of way, I feel a sense of excitement. I feel a sense of renewal. You can't not help but feel that in this type of an environment. And for all of you who have been coming regularly and contributing and paying attention and caring about the results, it shows us your heart. It shows us how much College of the Sequoias means to you. And yeah, this is important because it's our jobs. Nobody's going to deny that. But what I've learned about working with all of you is this is more than our job here at COS. This is more than our profession. This is a calling. This is our passion. When I get the opportunity to visit that student senate every week, I feel like I could spend 10 hours a day in there, because we're in front of young people. We're in front of students, influencing their lives, improving their lives, teaching them, and making them better. That's what everything in this institution is about, and that's why we're going to be stronger for having come through this. Okay, we've gone about 10 minutes over on our time. You guys have been very patient. Thank you so much. This meeting's adjourned.